Year 5, welcome to your second lesson of the Home Learning Maths. Today we are going to be doing fractions as decimals. Before we begin with today's lesson, here are the answers to Lesson 1's worksheet. So here are the answers for questions 1, ABC and 2A to F. So you can mark your work accordingly. And then we also have the answers to questions 3 and questions 4. So go through these slides, or pause the video here and go back and forth, and then mark your work. If you've got a large amount of the questions wrong, then please do let myself or Mrs. Moore know, and we can try and have a look at where you may have gone wrong. Let's begin today's learning where we're looking at fractions as decimals. So let's have a look at this first question. What is a half as a decimal? Now, what we know about decimals is that they're made up of tenths and hundredths. Because we all know, if we think about the place value grid, we have ones, and then we have the decimal point, and then we have tenths and hundredths. So the best thing we can do is turn this half into an equivalent fraction made up of tenths. So 1/2, we know that we're going to change the denominator from 2 to 10. So we need to do 2 multiplied by 5 to give us 10. And whatever we do down here to the bottom, we have to do to the top. So 1 multiplied by 5 will give us 5/10. So as an equivalent fraction, half is equivalent to 5/10. So let's have a look at this in our place value grid to help us turn it into a decimal. So we know that 5/10 will have 0 ones, and very simply 5/10. So as a decimal, half is 0.5. So let's have a look at another decimal. So this one says, what is 1/4 as a decimal? Now remember, what we need to do is we need to turn it into convert it into tenths or hundredths. Now we'll realise that when we're looking at quarters, our denominator is 4, and we can't turn this into tenths very easily, so we will turn it into hundredths. So we have 1/4, and we will turn it into hundredths. Now we should know that 4 times by 25 is 100. A quarter of 100 is 25, because we know that half of 100 is 50 and half of 50 is 25. So 4 multiplied by 25 gives us 100. And whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. So we will times our numerator by 25, which will give us 25 hundredths. So 1/4 is equivalent to 25 hundredths. Now let's put this on a place value grid to help us turn it into a decimal. So we know we have 0 ones, and we know that we cannot put 25 into our hundredths column. So we will turn this 25 hundredths convert it into 2/10 and 5 hundredths. So as a decimal, 1/4 is 0.25. So really all you have to do is take your fraction and convert it into either tenths or hundredths to turn fractions into decimals. Okay, here's another one for us. So what is 3/4 as a decimal? So as we discussed in the previous question, we are going to turn the 4s and the denominators into hundredths. And we know that we now know that we can do 4 multiplied by 25 is 100, and whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. 3 multiplied by 25, well, we know that 2 25s are 50, and then we just need to add another 25 to give us 3 times 25, which we will know 50 plus 25 is 75. So 3/4 is equivalent to 75 hundredths. So let's put that in our place value grid to help us. So we know that we have 75 hundredths is no ones. And again, like the last question, we cannot put 75 into our hundredths column. So we will convert it into 7/10 and 5 hundredths. So 3/4 as a decimal is 0.75. Okay, Year 5, now it is your turn to have a go at doing this. So your question says, what is 1/5 as a decimal? Now, as we've done in the previous questions, you need to convert this into either tenths or hundredths to help you then turn it into a decimal. So pause the video here, have a go at doing that either on your whiteboard or a piece of paper or whatever you're working on, and then come back and I will talk you through it. So pause the video and have a go. Okay, so I'm going to do this using my pen. So I have 1/5 and I need to turn it into a decimal. So what I'm going to do is turn this into an equivalent fraction with tenths, because that seems easy enough to me. Gosh, sorry about my writing. So 5 multiplied by what gives us 10? Now we should very clearly be able to know that 5 multiplied by 2 is 10. And whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So 1, oh gosh, sorry about my writing, multiplied by 2 gives us 2. So as an equivalent fraction, 1/5 is the same as 2/10. Now, I can very easily now turn this into a decimal. 2/10 is the same as 0.2. So as a decimal, 1/5 is 0.2. It's that simple. Okay, here's another kind of question that might come up on your worksheet, and it says, write the quantity as a decimal. So what we have here is it says 8.5 kilograms. So we don't need to worry about our 8 because that is 8 wholes, so that is fine. But we need to think about this half and turn that into a decimal. So we have a half, and we know from previous learning that as a decimal, half is 0.5. So therefore, 8.5 kilograms, written as a decimal number, is 8.5 kilograms. Okay, Year 5, it's now over to you to get on with your worksheet. So just remember, when you are turning fractions into decimals, the best thing to do is convert your fractions into equivalent fractions of tenths or hundredths, and then you'll very simply be able to turn them into decimals. So have a go at your worksheet. As usual, remember, if you get stuck at any point, come back to this video, or if you're completely baffled, then please do let Mrs. Moore and myself know, and we will try and help you. Good luck.